Jack was the one that was asking the question, so now I'll turn to Jack, who owns Ipwich Hobbies, for his build along of his section house, where he is being the mentor to you on how to build this. Jack, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jim. In any event, thank you, gentlemen, especially those who have participated along the way. Here in part 4, we're going to finishing up. We're finishing up, and we'll take a look at putting the roofs. As you recall, we went vertical last week. Roof trim, rafter tails, all those good things we'll be chatting about for a few minutes. The roofs that I have are almost all cardstock, and of course we're talking about the section house build here in N scale, HO, and O scale. This particular model is based on a prototype, and that prototype had a smoke jack that was right in the center of the apex of the roof. So, and the cardstock roof has a crease in it, so it's easy enough to see where that fold goes. You measure that beginning and you put a hole right in that center of the roof, the cardstock piece, and then you expand that. Use your knife to expand that to make sure the smoke jack is going to fit there. The photograph in the bottom right, you can see there's a ridge beam. Not all my kits have ridge beams, but it's simple enough to put one in on your own with some scrap lumber, scrap strip wood. But the point here is just carve a flat spot in the center so that your smoke jack has a place to, a good gluing surface. It has a place to sit if you've got a roof beam. And some of the kits where I have a chimney elsewhere and it's not convenient, it's not sitting on a roof beam somewhere, I'll use, a brass tube or something, and sometimes I'll bring it all the way to the floor inside the structure just to make sure that that chimney or smoke jack doesn't get knocked off. And that top left-hand photo, that's the underside of the shed roof on the addition. And that's just illustrating some bracing that I'm putting in there just to make sure that cardstock does not warp over time. And that top right photo is the top version of the cardstock roof of the main structure, and then just a few pieces of the rolled roofing. This kit, all 3 of the scales has rolled roofing to it, and that's simply just black construction paper that has been pre-sliced, but you can cut up any piece of black construction paper to make a road roofing. And you'll notice that going back down to the photographs on the left, you want to make sure that you've painted the edges of the roof and whatever edge might overhang and potentially be seen in the completed model. If you're looking down on the models, as most of us do, you're probably not going to see underneath the roof overhang anyway. But if it's a higher up, a hillside, or even a second deck or a third deck on your layout, you're going to see the underside of the overhang. So you want to make sure that you don't have any raw cardstock or raw wood showing. And let's see, I think that takes care of that. The next slide, we've got the rolled roofing. You see, I'm just illustrating a few applications here. You can bring this all the way over, which I did in the N scale version of this, or you can cut them in the segments. In theory, according to the architectural websites that I've looked at, you typically have vertical application on the rolled roofing, whereas on the horizontal slope, like on the addition to the section house, it's often horizontal. I don't think anybody's going to scold you if you do it incorrectly in terms of the vertical versus horizontal, but I'll try to go with that since that's what the internet tells me is the right way to do it. I use a glue stick or double-sided tape for my applications. if you're into a shingled structure, often those shingles come with an adhesive backing. Again, going with the belt and suspenders approach, I use two-sided tape or a glue stick anyway, even with an adhesive back shingle. Roof trim. You can see here that well, you don't see the prototype, but the prototype that you have seen in previous sessions, there were 6 of these, like what I call spacers, between the top trim, lost it, and the outside piece of roof trim. So those 6, got a sensitive touch here. Those 6 spacers, I just used a piece of 3x5 card and just measured them equidistant, drew some pencil lines in the roof frame, as you can very faintly see in that top left-hand photograph. And just glued those 6 and trim off the edge. And as you can see in the bottom photograph, it's a nice clean look that probably nobody will ever see once the building is on the layout, but I know it's there and it looks good. You'll see here too that the photograph will show all kinds of sins. Here I didn't paint the underside of the windowsills, so I should have done that. I popped in my window in the loft area just a tad, but I was able to pull that out. So that's an easy repair that I was able to take care of. Rafter tails, similar here. Sometimes you can get templates for rafter tails that might be 16, 20, or 24 inches apart. Here I had a prototype to work with, so I counted the rafter tails that were exposed on the front. And so I just made this template, drew 15 equidistant lines, transferred them to the top of that wall, and then I glued and cut away. I used my sprue nippers to, some people use toenail clippers, but I used sprue nippers to trim down to the these rafter tails get a nice, neat appearance from the side. You want to make sure you paint the ends of the rafter tails after you cut them off. Smoke jack and vent. This particular kit had, as I mentioned earlier, the smoke jack that was right in the middle of the roof at the apex. And I dull coated this first. You can paint a primer. It's just a piece of plastic. It's resin, actually. It's 3D printed. So I use dull coat. You can also use a primer. Then paint it. The prototype looked like it was a light gray or silver, perhaps a galvanized type of metal that was all rusted. And I've seen them black and gray. No other colors, just those 2. Down below, and we spoke about this, I think it may be the first session even, that we're guessing is a vent. We're guessing that the potbelly stove went away at some point in the 100-year life of this structure and was replaced with some other heating appliance, such as a propane stove inside. And so we're, another historian and I at Boston and Maine Railroad, we're guessing that that was an exhaust vent for that propane stove. And that comes just as 4 different pieces that becomes a sandwich. You just glue one over the other. It gives you some depth to it. And paint that gray. Doesn't show up here, but that's kind of a gray. And note that I was surprised that it was near the window, frankly. But not only is it near the window, it's not directly under the center. It's kind of offset. So strange location in my view, but I'm sure they had a reason for putting it there. Added details. I used pan pastel weathering powders quite a bit, virtually every model now. I have a drawer full of probably 2 dozen chalks that I have scratched and scraped and turned into dust in tiny jelly jars. And I haven't used them, I don't think, in 3 or 4 years since I started using the pan pastels. And these are not with the kit, but I just decided on at least the O scale, since that they show up better. I added a few, crates and barrels, and these are Tichy crates that I put together. There's a couple of pallets. I think those are Tichy pallets. And I forgot where I got these, but I have a bunch of those that I put in some of my kits. And it's just a stack of crates with a few cans of whatever, paint or something on top of them. And I glued that to the floor so that in my open door, the only kit of these 3 that I had an open door on was the O scale. So if you look on the O scale door, you can see something inside. And I want to note here that some of the stuff that I have, like these wooden barrels and some of these crates, these are HO scale. I said, what the heck, and there's a bookcase that I put inside that right in the back on the floor that doesn't show in the photographs. I said, what the heck, bookcases come in all sizes and crates come in all sizes. So I'm primarily an HO scale modeler. I'm limited on the O scale details that I have, the detail parts. So I just experimented and threw in, and it looks pretty good in the face model. This long, skinny photograph at the very bottom of the page, that's a ridge cap. And what I did here is I just took a piece of styrene angle and just cleaned up the top edge of the roof a little bit. Some folks will just put in like a square piece of strip wood or square piece of styrene, use that as a ridge cap. I typically would use the styrene angle, and it doesn't apply in any of these section house kits, but I use the reverse side of that and use them as channels. If I have for example, a residential building that has a gable that's coming out from the main part of the roof, that way I'll have a nice channel that hides a seam where those 2 pieces might be on a different type of roof. And of course, always remember pigeon droppings. You got to sprinkle a little bit of white here and there. I didn't have any O-scale birds, so there's none on my roof. Completion. These are what my finished kits look like under this exercise. Of course, as a manufacturer, I build each of my own kits in order to write instructions. For this exercise, I found it interesting. I built each of the kits over this past several weeks. And you'll see that the differences here. You got the O scale in the top row, middle is HO, the N scale on the bottom. And I don't know what I'm going to do with the O scale or the N scale, but I'll figure out a friend who's an N scaler or an O scaler and find a new home for those. And maybe they'll be on my for sale table at the Ella Judy June show. Now, the HO version, I'll find a place for that on my own layout. Some customer builds. Cyrus on the top left built this one over here. And you can see one thing I'll point out here. He has his speeder door, his little freight door here on the left bottom. He has the that kind of horizontal. The board should be vertical. Maybe he's modernized it and he's created a roll-up door to it. I don't know. But maybe that's an illustration where, illustrates one of Dennis's points where, just have a photograph or be explicit on as much as you can on thorough instructions. sometimes if we build a lot of models, maybe we take things for granted that beginners won't understand that, the boards are vertical. Tom C. has this one here on his layout. Well done. It looks nice. He's just going to put some detail around it and scenic that area, and he'll have a good looking shed. The bottom left is Bill Davis's. You might have seen that in the All Scale magazine a couple of years ago. I visited Bill, been over his house a couple of times. I took some pictures over there. So Martin, don't worry, I'm not impinging on anybody's copyright. Those are my own photographs. But I want to point out a couple of things here that Bill did. First of all, he added the ridge cap that I mentioned earlier on some other models, but he did the you've heard of board and batten before. These are the battens, and so instead of a grease mark or a light black pen mark at the seams, Bill actually added battens to his All Scale version of this kit. And Bill also changed the shed roof on the addition. He added some corrugated metal, and you can see down here he's got it all rusted. So he did a little bit of super detailing on his roofs. Looks good. And top right, I need to make that go away. Yeah. Top right, John is not finished with his model, but it's looking very good. He added a little bit of extra bracing on his roof. As you can see, he's got the ridge beam and he's got the smoke jack already positioned on there. Looks like he's already got it glued on. But you can see here he's got this extra piece of support. Most likely he did it on the other side that doesn't show in the picture. He also has put some window shades in from the inside. That's common. I know some guys like to paint their windows. I generally have resorted to painting myself. Using the manila folder or some other type of shade gives you a cleaner look probably than painting. I know sometimes I have to paint 2, 3, 4 coats before I get a good coverage over that window. And you have to be perfectly straight, so you need to mask that when you do it. I also want to point out, it doesn't show well here, but here it is. If you look at the front, way up top, about the second or third clapboard down from the top of that front wall on John S.'s model, he matched perfectly the single board that was lifting out of the prototype photograph that I showed everybody in the week number 1 of the build. So hats off to John for having done that. And Mr. Greg down here in the bottom right, he's decided that he's going to have an open door and he wanted to have the full stud wall detail on the inside. So he's coming along very nicely on his interior walls. So looking forward to seeing Greg's completion. And we've got some other folks that are still working on theirs and some finished, but they won't get the photographs to me until a bit later. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I thank you all who participated. We had surprisingly good participation with this kit build. So we had folks in all 3 scales, N, H, O, and O. Any questions?
I have a
Jack, I think
comment.
Yeah, please.
The comment is actually, it's sort of a question. Don't you just love it, Jack, when people take your building and add their own touch to it?
I do, and I also want to point something out. I modeled Boston and Maine, and I'm a craftsman kit builder more than a scratch builder. And I have the maroon and cream Boston and Maine colors. This particular shed prototype was a gray with white trim. Aside from this section house, almost all of my other kits of all the ones that I've seen on layouts and customer builds, very few of them model what the prototype looks like. So it's all very creative. Sometimes the full walls, the roof, all look the same, but they all have their own color schemes, whether it be fictional or
Sure.
or anything else. But it is great. I love it.
Yeah, I do. I love that too.
Jack, thank you so very much. You proved our point. You're a fantastic mentor to an awful lot of modelers. The way that you talk about building your models, the examples that you show, it couldn't be clearer. So thank you so much for participating in this. I hope you had a good time.
I did, Jim, and I used to teach real estate at BU, and it's true that if you teach, you learn as you go along. So doing this segment, it's the first time I've done it on the show, although I've done several clinics. I learned something every time from the participants, and so I appreciate that too.
Thanks again. Thanks so very much, and best of luck at Al Judy Show.
Yep, thank you.